Hey guys, it's Sarah, and today's video is going to be a 3 looks 1 palette on the new Urban Decay Stoned Vibes palette. This arrived yesterday and I am just so excited to play with it. They did send this to me in PR, which is super exciting. I'm so grateful. This just released on Sunday, August 30th, so it's brand new. And honestly, I feel like a lot of people were not that excited about this palette, but I was super excited about it. You guys know I love shimmery metallic eyeshadows. Those are my jam. And so the fact that it's 8 glittery metallics and 4 mattes is like the perfect ratio for me. So just a few quick details on the palette before we get into the looks. So the outer packaging is absolutely gorgeous. It has this sort of raised texture to it. It's supposed to look like a gemstone. I think it's beautiful. Very, very sturdy feeling packaging. And then on the inside, it does have a mirror. It does come with a dual-ended brush on the inside. One is kind of a fluffy end and one is more of a flat shader brush. Now, I will say when I first saw the photos of this on Trendmood a couple months ago, I thought that those 8 glitter shadows were going to be pressed glitters, and when I saw that I was kind of like, ooh, I don't know if I like that. But these are actually not pressed glitters in like the same way that like a ColourPop pressed glitter is. It's much more of a marbleized powder shadow, but they do almost feel creamy to the touch, so they're different than what I originally expected them to be. This palette is completely vegan, which I love. It retails for $54 and it is available at Ulta and Urban Decay's website, and then on September 20th it says it'll be available at Sephora, Nordstrom, Macy's, and QVC. So let's go ahead and get into the 3 looks. In the first look, I mainly focused on the bluer tones in here. The second look, I kind of focused more on the rose gold and lavender colors, and then in the third look, which is the one I'm wearing right now, I did more of a green gold kind of halo eye. So let's go ahead and get into look number 1. Let me go ahead and start with the shade Antidote, which is this matte peach. I'm gonna try out this fluffier end in the shade Antidote. I love this kind of shade for the transition. I kind of just want to go ahead and go into the shade Oho. When I swatched this, it looked incredible. So I will try it on the flat end of this brush and just kind of see what this brush is all about, if it actually, it's not really picking up much. So the interesting thing is, yeah, that's not going to be a good brush for this. I think I actually might just go in with my finger. These shimmers are very creamy. They almost have a little bit of like a squishiness to them. But yeah, that went on really nicely with a finger. It did get a little bit messy. And I forgot to say, I did go ahead and prime my eyes with the Ulta Matte Eye Primer. They also sent the eyeshadow primer potion in the package, but I wanted to go ahead and try with my usual primer today, just to kind of see how it works with what I'm used to, but then I figured in maybe the second look we could try the actual primer potion. Yeah, so it's interesting. It is definitely kind of hard to pick this shadow up on a brush. So I would honestly say that going in with a finger is probably going to be your best bet. So I am just blending again with that fluffy brush. Taking a little bit more of that peachy Antidote shade. So this Oho shade is very flaky, I am noticing, but it goes on super creamy. I'm just gonna build up a little bit more here. Honestly, having kind of a hard time getting this shade placed just right. I don't know if you can tell, but I feel like I'm getting a little bit messy up in the crease where I'm trying to blend it. It's getting kind of weird. All right, I'm going to take a little bit of the shade Hexed, which is that sort of reddish brown there, and kind of build that up in my outer corner. I'm hoping that this look will just kind of be one of those looks that comes together the more you work with it. Just taking a regular fluffy brush and blending out the edges a little bit. There's nothing on it. So I'm also really loving this shade Opal Aura here. It's just this kind of bluish, pinkish, opalescent shade. I kind of want to try putting a little of this on the center of my lid. Oh wow, that's pretty. Getting a very small amount of like very just dusty fallout on my cheeks. So I'm just gonna sort of brush that away. It's really nothing major though. was kind of worried that these might have a ton of glittery fallout since they are so glittery, but so far I'm not having a huge problem with that. Now I'm gonna go into this darker brown. It's like a plummy brown. This is actually not matte. It's a little bit more satiny, but I have a feeling it'll behave more like a matte. I'm just gonna build this up a little bit more in my outer corner just for a little more definition. And also kind of taking that on my lower lash line. I am going to take just a little bit of my concealer to kind of clean up that inner corner because it looks like there's a weird shadow there that I didn't want there. That was definitely just kind of my own fault because I didn't place that shadow very precisely. But I'm just going to take a little concealer brush and kind of clean it up a little bit. Alright, so that is much better. I'm going to go ahead and also use the shade Good Karma. It's just a matte cream color, which looks like it's going to be good for just kind of highlighting the brow bone and also just sort of blending everything out, cleaning up the edges, which I always like to do. Sort of just blurs out the edges. Alright, so then I'm just going to go in with some mascara. I'm just using the Urban Decay Lash Freak mascara, which I'm also loving, you guys know. I guess I used 6 shades here, all 4 of the matte shades, and then both of those more blue tones there. And it's funny, as I was finishing off this look, I was realizing this totally looks like something that I could have done with the Shared Planet Polar Bear palette, which makes me think maybe these palettes are similar. On the lips, I'm wearing a combination of Jordana's lip liner in Rockin' Rose. Pretty much filled in my lips entirely with that, and then I just put a little bit of Red Apple Beachside in the center of my lips, and I actually am loving that lip combo. So just to give you a little bit of a closer look here, I really do like the way that this look came together, although I will say I struggled a bit with the Oho shade, that darker blue color, just kind of getting it placed where I wanted it. And I think that part of that is just because it's a little bit of a deeper shade, and applying it with a finger is a little tricky to just get it placed properly. It's probably just something that you kind of have to get used to with this very different formula. The formula is different from anything else I've tried. Yeah, we'll just have to kind of see how that goes in the next couple of looks. All right, so for look number 2, I want to focus on some of the more like pinky rose golds in this palette. I really want to use the shade Vibes and possibly also Raw Energy and Meditate, those 3. Now it's interesting, in the pan, Raw Energy really looks like a purple, right? But in the swatch, that's that middle swatch there. So it's actually more of like a taupey silver with a purple undertone. So that's one thing that I've noticed about some of these shades, is that they actually look different on the eyes or in swatches than they do in the pan. Same with this shade Bloodstone. This almost looks like a grungy green, but there's what the swatch looks like compared to what's in the pan. Which actually that's not that different. I guess the pan just looks a little bit more brownish, whereas the swatch is actually a lot more vibrant than it looks in the pan. So I'm gonna flip you guys off. That's what that looks like on the finger compared to in the pan. You see how it's a little bit different? So I mean, that's just an interesting observation. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. So for this look, I am actually gonna use the primer potion. I've never used this before, but this actually did come in the PR package. And so I figured I would go ahead and try this out today. I know a lot of people have this eye primer, a lot of people love it, and I thought it might be nice to see how this palette performs with the primer that I guess it's kind of intended for. So I think the shade in this palette that I am most excited to use is Vibes. I mean, just look at that shade, it's gorgeous. So I'm actually just going to start applying this with my finger. Oh my goodness, that's so pretty. That is just going on so beautiful and foiled. Oh my goodness. I think that's my favorite shade in the palette. I haven't used every shade in the palette yet, but I'm gonna go ahead and say that that's my favorite. There's no way anything could beat that for me. That is chef's kiss. Just that is my favorite kind of eyeshadow shade. Okay, so let's do the other eye. So definitely having an easier time applying this today than I did with the blue shade yesterday. But then again, the blue shade is so bold that it can be a little harder to get it placed precisely, but oh my gosh, I love that. That, honestly, I would just wear that on its own, you know? That could also be a really beautiful topper shade, I'm sure, for a lot of these other shadows, so wow, that's so pretty. tiny bit of fallout on my face. Really, I'm pleasantly surprised that there's not a crazy amount of fallout with these chunky glitter shadows. Next, I'm going to take the shade Antidote, which is just that peachy matte shadow, on a fluffy brush and kind of just blend out my crease. I think I want this to be a pretty simple look. I think I will take a little bit of the shade Meditate there, which is more of kind of a rose gold, but it also has a little bit of like a purpley hue to it. I think I'll take some of that on my outer third of my lid. I'm gonna pick up some of Good Karma, the matte cream, and just use that to sort of blend out the edges. So I almost feel like that Vibes shade, the first shade that I put on, almost blended away a little bit when I was blending out my crease. So I'm gonna just apply a little bit more of that. I feel like I kind of had a similar problem yesterday with the blue. That's better. I don't know. It's a tricky formula. I will say it's different from any other eyeshadow I've ever used. I do kind of want to use the Raw Energy shade as well, that purpley color. Maybe I'll just layer that on the center of my lid. Definitely won't have the same effect as if I applied that on its own, but just trying to get some added dimension here. I'm gonna take a little more Vibes on the inner third of my lid. Oh, so beautiful. All right, and then I'm just gonna take some of that deepest shade there and smudge that along my lower lash line. Alrighty, so there's look number 2. I just went ahead and applied some mascara. And on the lips, I'm wearing my e.l.f. matte lip color in Tea Rose, and then I topped it with some of this new Bite Yay Sayer gloss in Sugar Drizzle. It's just like a clear gloss with some sort of goldeny shimmer in it. Felt like that tied the look together really nicely. So I love this look. This is my kind of eye look. Very ethereal, very glimmery. I love the kind of rose gold lavender tones of this look. I like the way that that Antidote shade blended everything out. I feel like the peachy matte looks beautiful alongside those shimmer shades. So that is look number 2. Let's go ahead and jump into look number 3 now. I am filming this on the same day as look number 2, and so I tried to just remove my eyeshadow without destroying the rest of my makeup because I really didn't want to have to do my face makeup all over again. I feel like my skin would not be very happy with me if I did that. So for look number 3, I'm planning on doing a kind of greenish gold eye look. The only shades I haven't used so far are Jade, Bloodstone, and Tiger's Eye. So I definitely want to use those 3 so that we can at least use every shade once in this video. So I am going to use the Urban Decay Primer Potion again. So I'm going to start with the shade Antidote again. I do feel like it's a good idea to apply my matte crease colors before I go in with the glitter shades, because in the last couple of looks I did feel like I had a hard time blending the mattes after I'd applied the glitters. I felt like the glitters kind of started to blend away a little bit, so I'm gonna try it this way this time. I really like that Antidote shade. I feel like it's the perfect transition color for a lot of these glitter shades. Then I'm gonna go into Hexed here, which is that reddish brown, and I'm going to start to build that up in the inner and outer corners. I do kind of want this to be somewhat of a halo eye, I think. I really like halo eyes these days. So far, really having a good experience with the mattes. They're definitely nice and blendable. They are a little bit powdery, but nothing bothersome to me. So now for this Jade shade, that beautiful green, I'm gonna try this again with a brush and just see if my brush can pick this shade up. Just using the brush that came with it. It's very almost like a cream formula. Let's try it. I just feel like the brush isn't picking up enough of the shadow. Yeah, it's just, I feel like these shades are just meant to be applied with fingers if you want like maximum pigmentation. So I'm going to apply this just to the center of my lid. I'm gonna let it take up a pretty decent amount of space on my lid. So that's jade on the center, certainly not perfectly blended yet, but that is gorgeous. I love that shade. So I kind of want to take Bloodstone, which is that really interesting kind of, almost like a multi-chrome. It's got some reddish brown, some olive green, some gold on the outer corners of my eyes, kind of layered over the matte reddish brown. All right, so now I'm just gonna take a little bit of Tiger's Eye and focus that on the very center of my lid. I'm just gonna use my pinky to apply that one. All right, on the lower lash line, I'm gonna kind of mirror what's happening on the upper lid. I'm just gonna take Hexed, a little bit of Hexed on the outer and inner parts of my lower lash line. And then I'm just gonna take a little bit more of Tiger's Eye on the center. I'm gonna try that with my little smudge brush. Yeah, that's applying it decently well. All right, I'm just gonna take once again some of Good Karma to highlight my brow bone and clean up the edges. And on the lips, I just applied some of my e.l.f. tinted lip oil in Raspberry Truffle Kiss. It's like a brick red. So there's that third look. This is such a beautiful fall look to me. I'm not normally a green eyeshadow person, but I really like the way these tones came together. You know, layering 3 of the glitter shadows might kind of seem like overkill, but I really wanted to at least use every shade in the palette once in this video, but I really do feel like they all layered together so beautifully. I'm excited to also use Tiger's Eye kind of on its own. I think that would be gorgeous as just a standalone lid shade as well. Pretty much any of these glitter shades would be beautiful on its own as well. So I'm honestly really looking forward to continuing to play with this palette. A few palettes in my collection that I do feel like are similar to the Stoned Vibes palette, although I don't have any dupes in my collection. One that actually stood out to me was my Billie Beauty Eyes of India palette. If you look at these two side by side, there are quite a few similarities. They both have a royal blue, they both have kind of a grassy green color, they both have a gold, they both have kind of a mauvey pink shimmer, they both have some of those reddish browns. So similar, definitely not the same. I mean, the formula of the Billie Beauty palette is completely different, but there are some similar colors in there. That's one that stood out to me. And then another one, like I said, with look number 1 was Shared Planet. So one similarity is the fact that the Shared Planet palette has the exact same ratio of shimmers to mattes as the Stoned Vibes palette. Both of these are 12-pan palettes, although Stoned Vibes is a lot smaller, which I actually kind of like. But they also both have a royal blue, they both have kind of an icy opal kind of color, they both have sort of a mauvey pink, so some similarities, but I only found a few shades in here that kind of overlapped with the Stoned Vibes. And then another one that had a few similar shades was the Anastasia Norvina palette. Definitely a completely different color story, but another thing I felt was similar was the texture of the metallics in here. They both have a similar kind of almost creamy texture. So I wanted to point that out. I do feel like some of the metallics in Norvina are kind of similar to Stoned Vibes, but there really weren't very many overlapping shades between the two. So those were just a few palettes that I feel like are similar in my collection. The biggest difference between this and any other palette that I've tried really is the texture of those glittery shadows. I've really never tried anything like it. I would compare those glitters kind of to that e.l.f. Long Lasting Lustrous eyeshadow that I've always loved. It's kind of a squishy cream to powder kind of texture. This is similar to that, also kind of similar to the Norvina shades, but there's really nothing quite like this in my collection. I think the color story is really unique. I like that it's 12 shadows. It's not too overwhelming. It's a nice curated selection of colors, but there's still a lot of variety, a lot of different directions you can go. I feel like all 4 mattes really complement the metallics well. The main downside, and I think what makes this palette probably not for everyone, is just the kind of odd texture of the glitters. I feel like, at least for me, as someone who's not a makeup artist, not really that great at makeup, I just like doing my makeup, there's a little bit of a learning curve with those metallic shades, especially with the deeper shades. Like the blue, I did have kind of a hard time getting it on and placed exactly where I wanted it. I feel like you pretty much have to apply all the glitters with your finger. They don't really work with a brush, at least in my experience. But I don't personally mind that. I know some people don't like applying makeup with their fingers, so that's kind of the biggest thing for me, is just that they're they're just different. There's something different, which I think is great that we're seeing something so unique on the market. I really am loving it. Now, I'll be honest, like I said, I did receive this in PR, and I don't know that I would have bought it with my own money. I definitely would have waited to see reviews on it, and I probably would have waited to get it on sale, but I really do love everything about the color story and everything about the layout of the palette. I think is just spot on. The packaging is absolutely gorgeous. So just, yeah, I feel like you definitely don't need it. If you're on a low buy or a no buy, or it's not in your budget right now, you can absolutely skip it. Maybe if it's really calling out to you, wait for a good sale. But honestly, I love it. I'm so excited to keep playing with it. And I think it's just a really nice, unique palette release that it's something that we just haven't really seen a whole lot on the market. So I think that's exciting. So I think that is going to be it for this video. I hope it gave you a good idea of this palette. Keep in mind, these were literally the first 3 times that I've used the palette and swatched it. So I definitely need to play with it a lot more, and I'll definitely continue to share my thoughts as I continue to use it. But those are kind of my first, second, and third impressions on the palette. So I hope this video was helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think of this palette. Do you plan on picking it up? Do you plan on kind of waiting, watching some more reviews, or are you going to skip it all together? I'd love to hear your thoughts. But I hope you have a great rest of your day. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I would love to see you again soon, and hopefully I will talk to you in my next video. Bye.